You're being played. Right now, as you read this, someone in your life is manipulating the game while you're still trying to figure out the rules. They're not smarter than you. They're not more talented. They're just willing to do what you won't. And that's exactly why they're winning. For 5 centuries, one man's name has been synonymous with cunning, manipulation, and ruthless pragmatism. Niccolo Machiavelli didn't just observe power. He dissected it like a surgeon, revealing the dark machinery that runs beneath every throne, every boardroom, every relationship where one person holds leverage over another. His insights were so disturbing that the Catholic Church banned his books, and his very name became an insult. To call someone Machiavellian is to suggest they're devoid of conscience, willing to lie, cheat, and destroy to get what they want. But here's what nobody tells you about Machiavelli. He wasn't evil. He was honest, brutally, uncomfortably honest about how the world actually works versus how we pretend it works. While everyone else was writing flowery treatises about virtue and honor, Machiavelli was writing the manual that kings and conquerors actually used. He looked at power without the rose-colored glasses of morality and described what he saw. And what he saw should make you very uncomfortable, because it's still true today. Right now, you're probably operating under a set of assumptions that are actively working against you. You believe that hard work gets rewarded, that honesty is the best policy, that if you're good to people, they'll be good to you, that playing by the rules will eventually lead to success. These aren't just naive beliefs, they're dangerous ones. Because while you're being fair, ethical, and honorable, someone else is studying Machiavelli, and they're eating your lunch. The question isn't whether you should learn these lessons. The question is whether you can afford not to. Because ignorance of how power works doesn't make you noble. It makes you a victim. So let's strip away the comfortable lies and look at what Machiavelli actually taught. These aren't pretty truths. They're not designed to make you feel good. They're designed to make you effective. And if you can stomach what's coming, you'll never see the world the same way again. Let's start with the most uncomfortable truth Machiavelli ever wrote. It's better to be feared than loved. Your entire life, you've been told the opposite. Be kind, be likable, make people love you. And yes, in an ideal world, that would work perfectly. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live in Machiavelli's world, and in his world, love is conditional, but fear is constant. Think about it. When people love you, they love you because of what you give them. Validation, entertainment, resources, opportunities. But love evaporates the moment you stop providing value. The friend who loved you when you were successful, watch how fast that love disappears when you're struggling. The employee who loved working for you, see how quickly they jump ship when another company offers more money. Love is transactional, even when we pretend it isn't. Fear, on the other hand, doesn't require you to keep performing. When people fear you, they fear the consequences of crossing you. That fear remains whether you're present or absent, whether you're strong or temporarily weak, whether they like you or hate you. A boss who's loved might be ignored when they're not around. A boss who's feared is obeyed even in their absence. The teacher who's loved might lose control of their classroom. The teacher who's feared never does. Now, Machiavelli wasn't saying you should be a tyrant. He was far more sophisticated than that. He understood that the ideal is to be both feared and loved, but if you must choose, fear is more reliable. Because love makes people want to help you. Fear makes people afraid not to. And when everything falls apart, when resources are scarce, when times are hard, people stop caring about what they want to do and start worrying about what they have to do. Here's how this plays out in real life. You're in a negotiation. You can either be the nice person who wants everyone to feel good about the deal, or you can be the person who calmly makes it clear what happens if there's no deal. Who gets better terms? The person who's willing to walk away. The person who makes the other side fear losing more than they desire winning. Niceness is negotiated from a position of weakness. Fear negotiates from a position of strength. You're managing a team. You can either be the manager who's everyone's friend, who wants to be loved and never wants to make anyone uncomfortable, or you can be the manager who's fair but makes it crystal clear that underperformance has consequences. Which manager's team performs better? It's not even close. The manager who's loved might have people who enjoy coming to work. The manager who's feared has people who actually do work. This doesn't mean you should be cruel. Machiavelli was explicit about this. Cruelty for its own sake is weakness, not strength. It's the tantrum of someone who can't control themselves. True Machiavellian fear is calculated, strategic, and used sparingly. It's the threat that rarely needs to be executed because everyone knows it's real. The boss who fires people constantly isn't feared. They're just unstable. The boss who almost never fires people, but when they do, it's swift and absolute. That's the boss everyone fears disappointing. The modern world wants you to believe that being loved is enough, that being nice will protect you, that people will reciprocate your kindness, and sometimes they will. But when the stakes are real, when resources are limited, when someone has to lose for someone else to win, love is a luxury that people abandon instantly. Fear is the insurance policy that keeps working even when everything else fails. Now let's talk about appearances versus reality. Machiavelli's second major lesson is this: seem virtuous, but be flexible. You need to appear moral, generous, honest, and trustworthy. But you must be willing to act immorally, selfishly, dishonestly, and ruthlessly when necessary. This is the gap between what Machiavelli called how men live and how men ought to live. And he was clear: anyone who always does what ought to be done rather than what is actually necessary will destroy themselves. This is where most people completely misunderstand Machiavelli. They think he's advocating for being openly evil. He's not. He's advocating for being strategically flexible while maintaining a moral facade. The appearance of virtue is essential. The reality of virtue is optional. In fact, consistent virtue is often fatal. Why? Because the world is full of people who will exploit your goodness. Every time you tell the complete truth, you give someone ammunition to use against you. Every time you keep a promise that no longer serves you, you choose honor over effectiveness. Every time you play fair with people who play dirty, you choose to lose with integrity rather than win pragmatically. Machiavelli looked at the successful leaders of history and noticed something. They all cultivated reputations for being honorable, but none of them actually were. They broke treaties when it suited them, but they always had justifications ready. They betrayed allies, but they always framed it as necessary. They lied constantly, but they were never caught lying. The successful ones understood that reputation is what people believe about you, not what you actually are. Look at modern politics. Every politician campaigns on honesty and transparency. Every single one. And every single successful politician is a master of saying things that sound true but aren't, of making promises they have no intention of keeping, of appearing to take positions while leaving themselves room to maneuver. The ones who actually try to be completely honest, they get destroyed, not because voters punish dishonesty, but because their opponents use their honesty against them while lying about their own positions. In business, the same pattern holds. Companies talk endlessly about values and ethics and doing the right thing. But the successful companies are the ones that appear ethical while doing whatever is necessary to win. They'll underpay workers while publishing glossy reports about valuing employees. They'll destroy competitors while talking about free market competition. They'll lobby for regulations that hurt everyone else while claiming to support fair business practices. And it works because most people judge based on what they see, not what's actually happening. On a personal level, this means you need to manage your image carefully. You need to appear reliable so people trust you enough to give you opportunities, but you need to be willing to cancel plans, break commitments, and prioritize yourself when it actually matters. You need to appear generous so people feel indebted to you, but you need to be strategic about what you give and to whom. You need to appear humble so people don't see you as a threat, but you need to be ruthlessly ambitious in your actions. The mistake most people make is they try to actually be all the things they want to appear to be. That's exhausting and ineffective. The Machiavellian approach is simpler. Master the appearance and reserve the reality for when it serves you. This isn't about being a psychopath. It's about recognizing that the social world operates on perception, not truth, and that you're allowed to manage that perception strategically. This brings us to Machiavelli's third lesson, and it's perhaps his most controversial. It's better to be consistently harsh than inconsistently kind. When you must be cruel once and completely. When you're kind, spread it out over time. This is about the psychology of pain and pleasure, and Machiavelli understood it better than almost anyone. Here's the principle. When you hurt people, they remember it. That pain becomes a permanent part of how they see you. So if you're going to hurt people anyway, if you're going to fire employees, cut ties with allies, or eliminate threats, do it all at once. The total pain is experienced as one event, and eventually that single wound heals. But if you hurt people repeatedly, each instance is a fresh wound. The pain never heals because you keep reopening it. Conversely, when you help people, they quickly adapt to it and take it for granted. So don't give people everything at once. Spread your generosity over time. Each instance of kindness is experienced as a new benefit, a fresh reason to be grateful. The total value you provide is the same, but the psychological impact is multiplied because it feels like you're constantly giving rather than having given once in the past. This is why layoffs happen all at once. Companies that lay off 5% of their workforce every month for a year create maximum fear and resentment. Companies that lay off 30% once, as brutal as it is, create a single crisis that eventually passes. The survivors know where they stand. The uncertainty ends. The organization moves forward. It's cruel, but it's strategically cruel rather than thoughtlessly cruel. On a personal level, this means when you're ending relationships, cut cleanly. Don't slowly fade out. Don't give people false hope. Don't draw out the pain over months or years. Make the decision, communicate it clearly, and end it completely. Yes, it hurts more in the moment, but it hurts less in total, and it allows everyone to move on. The person who strings someone along for months thinking they're being kind is actually being more cruel than the person who ends things immediately. With benefits and generosity, do the opposite. Don't give someone a massive raise once. Give them smaller raises more frequently. Don't do one huge favor. Do many smaller ones over time. Each instance creates a moment of gratitude, a fresh reminder of your value. The total amount you give might be identical, but the psychological return is vastly higher. This is also why Machiavelli advised against trying to be everyone's friend. Inconsistent kindness is worse than consistent strictness. The manager who sometimes lets things slide and sometimes comes down hard creates anxiety because nobody knows which version they'll get. The manager who's always strict is at least predictable. People can adapt to consistent harshness. They can't adapt to randomness. Your instinct is probably to be gentle when delivering bad news, to soften blows, to cushion falls. That instinct is making things worse. When you must be harsh, be clearly and completely harsh. Then move on. Don't revisit it. Don't keep bringing it up. Don't make people relive it. And when you're generous, don't blow your entire budget at once. Spread it out. Make each act of generosity its own event. This connects directly to Machiavelli's fourth lesson. Never rely on the loyalty or gratitude of others. This might be his darkest insight, and it's one that most people never fully accept. We want to believe that if we're good to people, they'll be good to us. That loyalty is reciprocal. That gratitude is lasting. Machiavelli watched enough leaders lose everything to know better. People are loyal to their interests, not to you. They're grateful until gratitude becomes inconvenient. They'll remember your kindness right up until the moment that someone else offers them something better. This isn't because people are evil. It's because people are human. Self-interest is the most powerful and reliable motivator, and everything else is conditional on circumstances. The leader who treats their employees well and expects loyalty in return will be shocked when those employees leave for more money. The friend who's always there for others will be devastated when nobody's there for them during a crisis. The person who does favors expecting reciprocation will be disappointed constantly, because they're operating under a false model of human behavior. Machiavelli's model is simpler and more accurate. People will be loyal to you as long as being loyal serves their interests. The moment that calculation changes, so does their loyalty. This doesn't mean loyalty is impossible. It means loyalty is contingent. And if you want people to remain loyal, you need to ensure that disloyalty is always more costly than loyalty. This is why successful leaders don't rely on love or gratitude to keep people in line. They create structures where betrayal has consequences, not because they're paranoid, but because they're realistic. The company that relies on employee goodwill to prevent them from stealing will have theft. The company that has cameras, audits, and clear consequences for theft won't. Human nature doesn't change. Incentive structures do. On a personal level, this means you should never put yourself in a position where you're dependent on someone else's continued goodwill. The business partner who has access to all your accounts and could drain them tomorrow. That's not trust. That's foolishness. The friend you've told all your secrets to, who could destroy your reputation if they wanted. You've given them a loaded gun and hoped they never feel like pulling the trigger. Machiavelli would tell you to structure your relationships so that mutual benefit is obvious and ongoing, and betrayal is clearly costly. Don't rely on people being grateful for past favors. Create situations where helping you helps them right now. Don't expect people to remain loyal out of affection. Give them practical reasons why disloyalty would be a mistake. This sounds cynical, and it is, but it's also protective. The people who get destroyed in life are usually the ones who trusted too much, expected too much loyalty, counted too heavily on gratitude. The people who thrive are the ones who hoped for the best, but structured things assuming the worst. When people do remain loyal, it's a pleasant surprise. When they don't, you were already prepared. Machiavelli's fifth lesson is about timing and fortune. Act decisively when fortune favors you, and weather the storm when it doesn't. Most people do the opposite. They hesitate when opportunities appear, overthinking and analyzing until the moment passes. Then they take big risks when circumstances are against them, trying to force success through willpower. This is backwards and it's fatal. Machiavelli compared fortune to a river. When it's calm, you can build dams and channels to control where it flows. When it's flooding, all you can do is survive. The successful person recognizes which phase they're in and acts accordingly. When circumstances are favorable, when you have momentum, when opportunities are presenting themselves, that's when you push hard. You make bold moves. You take calculated risks. You expand aggressively. Because fortune won't remain favorable forever, but when circumstances turn against you, when momentum is lost, when obstacles multiply, that's when you consolidate. You protect what you have. You minimize risk. You wait for conditions to improve. Fighting against bad fortune is how empires fall. Working with good fortune is how empires rise. Most people waste their good periods being cautious and their bad periods being aggressive. They finally get a great opportunity, and they think about it, research it, consider all the risks, and by the time they're ready to move, someone else already has. Then when things are falling apart, when every indicator suggests they should pull back, they double down trying to salvage things, and they lose everything. The Machiavellian knows that timing is everything. When you're strong, press your advantage. When you're weak, preserve your strength. When trends are in your favor, ride them hard. When trends turn against you, don't fight the current. This requires honest assessment of where you actually are, which most people can't do. They mistake their wishes for reality. They think they're stronger than they are, or they panic when they're actually fine. In practical terms, this means when your career is ascending, when you're getting recognition and opportunities, that's when you ask for promotions. Switch to better positions, negotiate aggressively, not when you're struggling and desperate. When your business is growing, when customers are coming to you, when revenue is rising, that's when you expand, hire, invest. Not when you're barely surviving and hoping expansion will save you. It also means recognizing when to quit. Machiavelli understood that sometimes the right move is retreat. Not surrender, but strategic withdrawal. Knowing when to cut losses, when to abandon strategies that aren't working, when to admit that circumstances have changed and adjustment is necessary. This isn't weakness, it's intelligence. The leader who drives their army off a cliff because they refuse to retreat isn't brave, they're stupid. Let's move to Machiavelli's sixth lesson, and this one is particularly relevant to modern life. It's easier to maintain power than to acquire it, but only if you eliminate threats completely. Half measures in dealing with enemies will destroy you. This is about the fundamental asymmetry between attack and defense, and about the fatal flaw of mercy. When you're trying to gain power, you face everyone who currently has it and everyone else who wants it. The resistance is total. Every step is a battle. But once you have power, you have resources, position, and momentum on your side. Staying where you are is much easier than getting there was. This is true in business, politics, relationships, and every other domain where status matters. But here's the catch. You only maintain power if you neutralize threats completely. The enemy you wound but don't kill will recover and strike back harder. The competitor you weaken but don't destroy will rebuild and come after you. The person you humiliate but don't remove will spend years plotting revenge. Incomplete victories create permanent enemies. This is where kindness and mercy become liabilities. Your instinct, especially if you're winning, is to be magnanimous, to show mercy to defeated opponents, to let sleeping dogs lie, to take the high road. And if your opponent is actually defeated and stays defeated, maybe that works. But most of the time, mercy is just delayed conflict. You're choosing to fight the same battle again later when your enemy is stronger and angrier. Machiavelli studied this pattern throughout history. The leaders who survived were the ones who eliminated threats completely, not necessarily by killing, though sometimes that, but by thoroughly removing the threat's ability to retaliate. The leaders who fell were almost always destroyed by enemies they'd previously defeated but allowed to survive. In modern contexts, this means when you're in conflict with someone, you either make peace completely or you win completely. The middle ground where you kind of win but they kind of survive is where you lose. Eventually, if you're going to fire someone, actually fire them. Don't demote them and leave them in the organization to poison the culture. If you're going to compete with another company, compete to win their market share, not to coexist. If you're going to end a relationship, actually end it. Don't leave it in limbo, where you're technically broken up but still emotionally entangled. The harsh truth is that incomplete victories feel good in the moment, but create long-term problems. You get to feel like you won without having to completely destroy someone. You get to feel merciful and strong. But what you actually did is create an enemy who knows your tactics, understands your weaknesses, and has nothing to lose. That's not kindness. That's strategic stupidity. This doesn't mean you should be constantly destroying everyone around you. It means you should choose your battles carefully, and when you do fight, fight to actually win. Don't wound if you're not willing to kill. Don't humiliate if you're not willing to remove. Don't start conflicts you're not prepared to finish completely. Finally, let's talk about Machiavelli's ultimate lesson, the one that ties everything together. The ends justify the means, but only if you actually achieve the ends. This is the core of Machiavellian thought, and it's the most misunderstood. People think it means anything goes as long as you win. That's not quite right. It means that actions should be judged by their results, and that moral posturing that leads to failure is worse than ruthless pragmatism that leads to success. Machiavelli was writing for rulers who were responsible for the survival and prosperity of their states. In that context, a ruler who maintained peace, security, and stability through morally questionable means was better than a ruler who clung to virtue while their state collapsed into chaos. The means matter less than the outcome. Not because the means don't matter at all, but because the outcome matters more. This is where modern sensibilities completely clash with Machiavellian logic. We're taught that how you do something is as important as what you achieve, that the journey matters as much as the destination, that you should never compromise your values, even if it means losing. Machiavelli would call this suicidal idealism. He'd ask a simple question: if your values lead to your destruction, what good were your values? The Machiavellian perspective is that values are tools, not commandments. They're useful when they help you achieve your goals, and they're liabilities when they prevent you from achieving your goals. The successful person has values, but holds them flexibly. They know which principles are truly non-negotiable and which ones are tactical positions they can abandon when necessary. This creates an uncomfortable question you need to answer for yourself. What are you actually trying to achieve? Not what values you want to uphold, but what concrete outcomes you want. Because if you're clear on your actual objectives, you can evaluate whether your current approach is working. And if it's not working, you can adjust. But if you're more attached to feeling virtuous than to actually winning, you'll keep using ineffective strategies and telling yourself it's principled. Here's what Machiavelli understood that most people don't. The world doesn't reward your intentions. It doesn't care about your principles. It only responds to your actions and their results. You can be the most ethical person who ever lived, and if you fail, you fail. Nobody will remember your ethics. They'll remember your failure. But if you succeed, even through questionable means, people will eventually justify and excuse everything you did because you succeeded. This is the darkest truth of all. Winners write history. Successful people are presumed to have been right all along. Failures are presumed to have been wrong. Your reputation will be based on your results, far more than your methods. So the question isn't whether you should care about ends versus means. The question is whether you care more about feeling good about your methods or actually achieving your ends. Now, you might be thinking this is all terrible advice, that following Machiavelli's lessons would turn you into a monster, that the world would be worse if everyone operated this way. You might be right, but here's the thing. Some people already are operating this way. Your competitors, your adversaries, the people who want what you have. They've read the manual. They understand how power works. They're not handicapping themselves with fairness, so you have a choice. You can continue believing that the world rewards goodness, that playing fair will eventually pay off, that if you're just kind and honest and hard-working enough, everything will work out. Or you can accept Machiavelli's uncomfortable truth. The world is as it is, not as you wish it were. And in that world, the ruthless have a significant advantage over the naive. This doesn't mean you have to become what you hate, but it does mean you need to understand the game that's actually being played. You need to know these rules, even if you choose not to follow all of them. Because ignorance doesn't protect you. It just makes you an easier target. Machiavelli's lessons have survived for 500 years because they're true, but morally true, descriptively true. They describe how power actually works, how people actually behave, how conflicts actually resolve. You can reject them on ethical grounds, but you can't reject them on factual grounds. Look around. Watch who wins. Watch who loses. The patterns Machiavelli described are everywhere, once you learn to see them. The question isn't whether you should be Machiavellian. The question is how Machiavellian you need to be to protect yourself and achieve your goals in a world where others already are. That's a calculation only you can make. But make it with your eyes open. Make it knowing what the real rules are, not the fake ones everyone pretends to follow. Because the most dangerous position is thinking everyone else is playing fair when they're not. That's not virtue. That's just being unprepared. Machiavelli wasn't telling you how the world should be. He was telling you how it is. And 5 centuries later, nothing has changed. The names are different. The technology is different. But power still works the same way. So stop playing fair. Not because fairness is wrong, but because unilateral fairness is suicide. And start being strategic. Not ruthless for its own sake, but ruthless when the situation demands it. Because the person who figures this out first usually wins. And the person who never figures it out always loses.